The notification on my phone read 1:47 a.m. when I finally decided to stop pretending I wasn't waiting for Monica to come home. My name is Julian Vane, and I'm a 32-year-old cybersecurity analyst who should have known better than to trust someone who changed her passwords more often than her underwear. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. Monica Thorne, my wife of 4 years, had been pulling the working late routine for 3 weeks straight. Tonight marked the 7th time I'd called her office number, and like clockwork, she'd ignored the first 6 calls. The irony wasn't lost on me that a man who made his living catching digital liars had married one of the most creative fabricators I'd ever encountered. My home office glowed with the familiar blue light of multiple monitors. The smart security system I'd installed throughout our suburban Maine house hummed quietly in the background, recording everything with the precision of a digital witness that never blinked or looked away. I'd spent months perfecting this setup, integrating cameras, motion sensors, and remote access capabilities that would make most tech enthusiasts weep with envy. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. On the 4th ring, Monica finally picked up. "Julian? God, what time is it?" Her voice carried that breathless quality I'd grown to recognize, the same tone she used when climbing stairs or lying about where she'd been. "It's almost 2 in the morning, Mon. I was getting worried. I'm really busy, lots of work. This Henderson account is ruining me, and I've got 3 more interviews to prep for tomorrow." The words tumbled out in a rehearsed rush. "Can we talk in the morning? I'm in deep focus mode here." That's when I heard it. A man's laughter in the background, low and amused, followed by what sounded like someone saying, "Tell him you're reviewing resumes." "Monica," I said, my voice dropping to that calm tone my coworkers knew meant someone was about to get fired. "Your family already knows about your work. The hidden camera footage is in the chat." The silence that followed lasted exactly 4 seconds. I know because I was watching the timestamp on my computer screen, where the family Sunday dinner group chat was already exploding with notifications. "What?" Her voice cracked like thin ice under pressure. "What footage? Julian, what are you talking about?" "Check your phone," I said, and hung up. The beauty of modern technology isn't just in its capability, it's in its absolute unforgiving honesty. Unlike people, cameras don't lie, embellish, or conveniently forget details. They simply record what happens and store it with digital precision. 3 weeks ago, I'd noticed Monica's behavior shifting like sand in an hourglass. She'd started staying at the office until midnight, claiming her workload had doubled. Her phone was always face down during dinner. She'd developed a sudden aversion to my FaceTime calls, responding instead with quick texts about being in deep focus or client meetings running long. The final red flag had been her reaction when I offered to pick her up from work. "No, that's okay," she'd said, not looking up from her laptop. "I'll just grab an Uber. You know how crazy downtown parking gets." Downtown parking had never bothered Monica before. She'd circle blocks for 20 minutes just to save $5 on a parking meter. So I'd done what any reasonable cybersecurity professional would do. I'd used my remote access to check our home security system. The camera in my home office had a perfect view of my desk, which Monica occasionally used for her own work. What I saw instead was Monica and a man I didn't recognize using my desk for activities that had nothing to do with corporate recruiting. The man was tall, probably early 30s, with the kind of artificially perfect smile that screamed middle management. They were laughing about something, and I caught enough audio to hear Monica say, "He's so clueless. Julian thinks I'm actually working these late nights." The man, who I later identified as Silas Reeve, Monica's colleague from the recruiting firm, had responded with, "Poor bastard probably thinks you're employee of the month." I'd watched my wife mock my trust while defiling my workspace, and something inside me had shifted from hurt to something far more dangerous, calculated fury. The revenge I planned wasn't born from passion or rage. It was engineered with the same methodical precision I used to trace security breaches. I clipped exactly 60 seconds of the most incriminating footage, the part where Monica and Silas were clearly identifiable and their conversation was audible. Then I waited. I waited for her to lie to me one more time. When she answered that seventh call with her breathless excuse about working late while Silas laughed in the background, I knew it was time to execute my plan. The family Sunday dinner group chat included Monica's parents, her two siblings, and her grandmother, all conservative, church-going people who believed marriage was sacred and adultery was a sin worthy of social exile. I uploaded the video with a simple message. Monica's been working very hard lately. Thought you should see her dedication. Within minutes, my phone started buzzing with notifications as Monica's family members reacted with shock, disgust, and righteous anger. Her mother's message was particularly cutting. "How could you do this to Julian? We raised you better than this." While the family chat erupted in digital chaos, I calmly walked through our house, gathering Monica's belongings. Her clothes went into suitcases, her toiletries into boxes, her books and personal items into garbage bags. I worked with the efficiency of a man who'd been planning this moment for weeks. Then I changed every access code in the house. The smart locks, the garage door opener, the security system, even the Wi-Fi password, everything that would prevent Monica from simply walking back into the life she'd betrayed. By the time I finished, her belongings were neatly stacked on our front porch, and Monica Thorne was officially locked out of more than just our house. My phone rang again. Monica, of course. "Julian, please, let me explain." "Explain what? That you've been using our home as a hotel for your affair? That you've been lying to me for weeks? That you and Silas think I'm a clueless idiot?" "You don't understand. It's not what it looks like." "Monica, I have 60 seconds of high-definition video that says otherwise. Your family has seen it. HR will have a copy by morning. And unless you want your professional reputation to match your personal one, I suggest you collect your things and disappear." The line went quiet, except for what sounded like crying. "Where am I supposed to go?" "I hear Silas has a nice place," I said, and hung up again. Through my office window, I watched a car pull into our driveway. Monica got out of the passenger side, and Silas emerged from the driver's seat. Even from a distance, I could see the panic in their body language as Monica tried her key and found it useless. She pounded on the door, calling my name, but I simply watched from my office, eating popcorn and enjoying the show. The security cameras captured every moment of her desperation, and I made sure to save those files as well. Eventually, they loaded her belongings into Silas's car and drove away. I never saw Monica again as my wife, only as the star of the most effective revenge I'd ever witnessed. The next morning brought a series of phone calls that played like a symphony of justified outrage. Monica's mother called first, her voice tight with the kind of controlled fury that only comes from decades of practice managing family crises. "Julian, honey, I am so sorry. We had no idea Monica was capable of this kind of behavior." I sat in my kitchen, drinking coffee from the mug Monica had given me last Christmas, the one that said, "World's Best Husband," and felt a bitter satisfaction at the irony. "Mrs. Patterson, I appreciate that. I know this isn't easy for any of you." "Easy?" Her voice cracked. "Julian, that girl has brought shame on our entire family. Her father won't even say her name right now. And to do this in your own home, with your own—" I can't even finish the sentence. Monica's younger brother called an hour later. "Dude, I always thought Monica was the smart one in the family. Turns out she's just really good at hiding how stupid she actually is." By noon, I'd received sympathetic calls from 3 aunts, 2 cousins, and Monica's grandmother, who ended her conversation with, "You're better off without her, dear. A woman who can't honor her vows isn't worth the ring she wears." The professional consequences moved just as swiftly. I'd sent the footage to Silas's HR department with a formal complaint about employees using company time and resources for personal activities. The email I'd composed was a masterpiece of professional language wrapped around a nuclear bomb. To whom it may concern. I am writing to report a serious violation of your company's professional conduct policies. The attached video evidence shows two of your employees, Monica Thorne and Silas Reeve, engaged in inappropriate personal activities during reported work hours and using private residential property without permission. As a cybersecurity professional, I am obligated to report potential security breaches and policy violations. Please advise on how you plan to address this matter. The response came faster than I'd expected. Monica's supervisor, a woman named Patricia Wells, called me directly. Mr. Vane, I want to apologize on behalf of our company. The behavior shown in that video is absolutely unacceptable and does not reflect our professional standards. I appreciate that, Ms. Wells. I assume you'll be conducting an internal investigation? The investigation is already complete. Both employees have been terminated effective immediately. We've also reviewed their recent timesheets and discovered multiple instances of falsified overtime claims. That detail made me smile. Monica and Silas had been billing the company for overtime hours they'd spent in my home office, essentially getting paid to betray me. The poetic justice was almost too perfect. Will there be any legal action? We're considering our options regarding the fraudulent overtime claims. Thank you for bringing this to our attention, Mr. Vane. Your professionalism in handling this matter has been exemplary. After hanging up, I leaned back in my chair and contemplated the beautiful efficiency of consequences. In less than 12 hours, Monica had lost her marriage, her family's respect, her job, and her reputation. Silas had fared even worse. His social media profiles were already flooded with comments from people who'd seen the video. The footage had spread beyond the family chat. Monica's cousin had shared it with her book club, which included several wives of prominent local businessmen. The book club had shared it with their respective social circles, and within hours, half the town knew about Monica's overtime work. My phone buzzed with a text from my coworker, Danny Martinez. "Holy shit, Julian. I just heard about Monica. Are you okay?" I responded, "Better than okay. Justice has been served. Want to grab drinks after work? Mark and I are buying." Mark Thompson was our team's senior analyst, a quiet guy with a wicked sense of humor and an encyclopedic knowledge of digital forensics. If anyone would appreciate the technical elegance of my revenge, it would be Mark. We met at Murphy's Pub, a local dive bar that served as the unofficial headquarters for office gossip and after-work decompression. Danny and Mark were already at our usual table when I arrived, and I could tell from their expressions that they'd been discussing my situation. "So," Danny said without preamble, "on a scale of 1 to 10, how satisfying was it to watch her face when she realized she was locked out?" 11, I said, signaling the bartender for a beer. "Maybe 12. Mark leaned forward, his eyes bright with professional curiosity. "Walk me through the technical side. How did you set up the remote monitoring without her knowing?" I spent the next hour detailing the security system I'd installed, the remote access protocols, and the precise timing of my revenge. Both of them listened with the appreciation of fellow professionals who understood the artistry involved in a well-executed plan. "The beauty of it," I explained, "is that everything I did was completely legal. I monitored my own property with my own equipment. I shared factual information with relevant parties. I changed the locks on my own house and removed an unauthorized person's belongings." "And the professional consequences?" Danny asked. "Natural results of their own choices. I didn't get them fired. They got themselves fired by violating company policies." Mark raised his beer in a mock toast to Julian Vane, who turned cybersecurity into an art form. As we drank, other patrons began approaching our table. Word of Monica's downfall had spread through the local professional community with the speed of a computer virus, and everyone wanted to hear the story directly from the source. Tom Bradley, who worked at the bank where Monica and I had our joint accounts, stopped by to offer his condolences and some interesting information. Julian, I probably shouldn't tell you this, but Monica came in this morning trying to access your accounts. When I told her she'd been removed as an authorized user, she completely lost it, started screaming about how you'd ruined her life and demanding to speak to the manager. What did the manager tell her? Same thing I did, that you'd followed proper procedures for removing a spouse from joint accounts, and that she'd need to establish her own banking relationships. Another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. I'd spent the morning not just changing locks and passwords, but systematically removing Monica from every shared aspect of our life. Bank accounts, credit cards, insurance policies, utility bills, anywhere her name appeared next to mine, I'd legally separated our interests. The conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the bar's entrance. Monica's best friend, Taylor Hoffman, had walked in, and her presence immediately shifted the room's energy. Taylor was a social climber who'd always treated me like Monica's unfortunate accessory, and I could see from her expression that she was looking for a confrontation. She marched over to our table, her heels clicking against the wooden floor like gunshots. "Julian Vane, you are a vindictive, cruel bastard," she announced loudly enough for the entire bar to hear. I looked up at her with the same expression I'd used to examine a particularly uninteresting piece of malware. "Hello, Taylor. I assume Monica sent you to plead her case?" "She's devastated. She's lost everything because of your petty revenge." "She lost everything because of her own choices. I simply made sure those choices had appropriate consequences." Taylor's face flushed red. "You destroyed her reputation over one mistake." "One mistake?" I stood up, and the bar grew quieter as people sensed the approaching confrontation. "Taylor, would you like to see the metadata on the security footage? Because I can show you timestamps proving this wasn't one mistake, it was weeks of deliberate deception. She made an error in judgment. She committed adultery in my home, lied to my face repeatedly, mocked my trust to her lover, and billed her company for overtime hours she spent betraying me. That's not an error in judgment, that's a character defect." The bar had gone completely silent now, with every patron listening to our exchange. Taylor tried a different approach. "Fine, she made mistakes. But did you have to involve her family? Her job? You could have handled this privately." I smiled, and several people later told me it was the coldest expression they'd ever seen. "Taylor, Monica made her choices public when she decided to use my home as her personal brothel. I simply ensured that the people who needed to know the truth had access to it." "You're a monster." "No, Taylor. I'm a man who refused to be a victim. There's a difference." She stood there for a moment, clearly searching for another angle of attack, but finding nothing that wouldn't make her look worse. Finally, she turned and stalked out of the bar, leaving behind a room full of people who'd just witnessed a masterclass in controlled confrontation. The bartender, an older man named Pete who'd been serving drinks in this place for 20 years, walked over and set a fresh beer in front of me. "That one's on the house," he said. "I've seen a lot of divorces play out in this bar, but I've never seen a man handle one with that much class." As the evening continued, I realized that my revenge had accomplished something I hadn't expected. It had earned me a level of respect from people who'd previously seen me as just Monica's quiet husband. The story of how I'd systematically dismantled her deception was spreading through our social circles, and the consensus was overwhelmingly in my favor. By the time I left Murphy's pub that night, I understood that Monica's betrayal had inadvertently given me something valuable: a reputation as a man who wouldn't tolerate being disrespected, and the technical skills to ensure that disrespect had consequences. The real satisfaction wasn't in Monica's downfall. It was in the knowledge that I'd handled the situation with precision, legality, and devastating effectiveness. The following week brought revelations that made Monica's initial betrayal look like amateur hour. It started with a phone call from Patricia Wells, the HR director who'd fired both Monica and Silas. Mr. Vane, I'm calling because our investigation has uncovered some additional information you should be aware of. I was in my office, ostensibly working on a security audit for a local medical practice, but mostly enjoying the steady stream of updates about Monica's professional destruction. What kind of information? It appears that Ms. Thorne and Mr. Reeve were involved in several policy violations beyond what we initially discovered. They were using company resources to plan personal activities, including booking hotel rooms on the corporate travel account. The irony was delicious. While I'd been watching them use my home office, they'd also been using company funds to rent rooms for their affair. The level of arrogance required for that kind of behavior was almost impressive. Are you pursuing legal action? We're considering it. The fraudulent expenses total nearly $4,000 over the past 2 months. We'll likely be filing a civil suit to recover the funds. After hanging up, I made a note to follow up on that lawsuit. If Monica and Silas were facing financial liability on top of everything else, it would add another layer to their consequences. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. Monica. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, No, we don't. Please, I can explain everything. You already explained everything. It was captured in high definition. Julian, I'm begging you. I've lost everything. Good. That was the point. She didn't respond immediately, and I went back to work. But 20 minutes later, another message appeared. I know you're angry, but this is destroying more than just me. Silas has kids. His wife left him. I read that message 3 times, feeling a cold satisfaction settle in my chest. Silas's wife had left him. That meant the consequences were spreading exactly as they should. I typed back, Silas should have thought about his kids before he decided to commit adultery with a married woman. Actions have consequences. You're enjoying this. Yes, I am. The honesty of that admission felt liberating. I was enjoying Monica's downfall, and I wasn't going to pretend otherwise. She'd humiliated me, betrayed my trust, and mocked my intelligence. Watching her face the natural consequences of those choices was deeply satisfying. That afternoon, Danny stopped by my office with coffee and gossip. You're not going to believe what I heard at lunch, she said, settling into the chair across from my desk. Try me. Monica's been calling around town, trying to find another job. Apparently, word has gotten out about why she was fired and no one wants to hire her. That's unfortunate, I said, not bothering to hide my smile. It gets better. Taylor Hoffman, you remember her from the bar the other night, she's been going around town trying to defend Monica, telling people that you're a vindictive ex-husband who destroyed an innocent woman's life. And how's that working out for her? Not well. Most people have seen the video by now, and they're not buying the innocent woman narrative. In fact, Taylor's campaign is backfiring. People are starting to question her judgment for defending someone who committed adultery. The ripple effects kept expanding in ways I hadn't anticipated. Monica's betrayal wasn't just destroying her reputation, it was damaging anyone who tried to defend her actions. There's more, Danny continued. I heard from Sarah at the bank that Monica tried to take out a loan using your house as collateral. When they told her she had no legal claim to the property, she started making threats about getting a lawyer. What kind of threats? The usual desperate stuff. She was claiming you'd manipulated her, that the video was taken without her consent, that she deserved half of everything you owned. I leaned back in my chair, considering this development. Monica was apparently moving from acceptance to anger, which meant she might try to escalate the situation. Did Sarah say anything else? Just that Monica looked terrible, like she hadn't slept in days, and she was driving some beat-up rental car, so I guess Silas isn't sharing his transportation anymore. That evening, I decided to take a drive past Monica's temporary apartment. I wasn't stalking her, I was conducting reconnaissance. There's a difference, and as a security professional, I understood the importance of monitoring potential threats. Monica was staying at the Riverside Apartments, a rundown complex on the outskirts of town that catered to people in transitional situations. The parking lot was filled with older cars and the kind of vehicles that suggested their owners were struggling financially. I spotted Monica's rental car, a dented Honda Civic that looked like it had seen better decades, parked in front of a ground-floor unit. The lights were on inside, and I could see shadows moving behind the thin curtains. As I watched, the door opened and Monica emerged, followed by a woman I didn't recognize. They appeared to be arguing about something, and the conversation looked heated. After a few minutes, the other woman got into a car and drove away, leaving Monica standing alone in the parking lot. She looked exactly like Danny had described, exhausted, defeated, and desperate. Her hair was unwashed, her clothes were wrinkled, and she moved with the defeated posture of someone who'd realized that her actions had consequences she couldn't escape. I felt no sympathy for her. This was justice, pure and simple. My phone rang, interrupting my surveillance. It was Mark. "Julian, you need to know something. Monica and Silas were just at Murphy's pub and they were asking questions about you." "What kind of questions?" "They wanted to know about your work schedule, where you lived, whether you had any enemies or legal problems. Pete the bartender told them to get lost, but they were definitely fishing for information." This was concerning. If Monica and Silas were investigating me, it suggested they might be planning some kind of retaliation. Did they say what they wanted the information for? No, but the impression I got was that they're looking for leverage, maybe trying to find something they can use against you. I thanked Mark and hung up, then made a mental note to review my own security measures. If Monica was moving from desperate to vindictive, I needed to be prepared for escalation. The next morning brought confirmation that my instincts were correct. I arrived at work to find a police officer waiting in the lobby of our building. "Mr. Vane, I'm Officer Jennifer Hayes with the local police department. I need to ask you some questions about a harassment complaint that's been filed against you." My pressure spiked, but I kept my voice calm. "What kind of harassment complaint?" "Your ex-wife claims you've been stalking her, threatening her, and using your technical skills to monitor her communications without consent." I almost laughed. Monica was trying to turn my legal, justified actions into criminal behavior. "Officer Hayes, I'd be happy to answer your questions, but I think you should know that I have extensive documentation of everything I've done, and all of it has been completely legal. Can we sit down somewhere and talk about this?" We went to a conference room where I spent an hour walking Officer Hayes through the timeline of events. I showed her the security footage from my own home, the documentation of my legal right to monitor my own property, and the records of how I'd properly removed Monica from our shared accounts and assets. "Mr. Vane, based on what you've shown me, it appears that your ex-wife's complaint is without merit. You had every right to monitor your own property, and changing locks on your own home isn't harassment. What about her claim that I threatened her? Do you have any record of threatening communications?" I pulled out my phone and showed her the text message exchange from the previous day. "As you can see, Officer Hayes, I told her that actions have consequences. That's not a threat. It's a statement of fact." She reviewed the messages, then closed her notepad. "Mr. Vane, I'm going to recommend that this complaint be dismissed. Your ex-wife appears to be using the police department to continue a domestic dispute that's already been resolved. However, I would advise you to avoid any direct contact with her going forward." "I have no intention of contacting her. I'm done with Monica Thorne." After Officer Hayes left, I sat in the conference room for a few minutes, processing what had just happened. Monica's attempt to criminalize my revenge had backfired spectacularly. Not only had the police officer dismissed her complaint, but now there was an official record of Monica filing false harassment charges. I called my lawyer, David Chen, and scheduled an appointment to discuss protective measures. "Julian, based on what you're telling me, you might want to consider filing for a restraining order against your ex-wife. Her pattern of behavior suggests she's escalating, and you have grounds to argue that she's harassing you." "Would that be effective?" It would create a legal record of her inappropriate behavior, and it would give you recourse if she continues to make false allegations. I decided to move forward with the restraining order. If Monica wanted to play legal games, I was prepared to win. The paperwork was filed that afternoon, and Monica was served with the restraining order the next morning. According to the process server, she'd reacted with shock and anger, claiming that I was the one harassing her. But the legal system, unlike Monica, dealt in facts rather than convenient fiction. The restraining order was granted based on the evidence I'd provided, and Monica was legally prohibited from contacting me or coming within 500 feet of my home or workplace. The irony was perfect. Monica's attempt to use the legal system against me had resulted in her being legally barred from continuing her harassment campaign. That evening, I received a call from Monica's mother. "Julian, I want you to know that we support the restraining order. Monica's behavior has been completely unacceptable, and she needs to face the consequences of her actions." "I appreciate that, Mrs. Patterson. We're cutting off all financial support until she gets professional help. This vindictive behavior isn't the daughter we raised, and we won't enable it." With that call, Monica lost her final safety net. Her family had officially disowned her, her professional reputation was destroyed, her lover had abandoned her, and she was now legally prohibited from contacting the one person she blamed for her downfall. The systematic destruction of Monica Thorne was complete, and every consequence had been earned through her own choices. 2 weeks after the restraining order was served, I thought the Monica situation was finally resolved. I was wrong. The first sign of trouble came on a Thursday evening when I arrived home to find my front door slightly ajar. I hadn't left it open, and the smart lock showed no record of authorized entry. Someone had broken into my house. I called 911 immediately, then waited in my car until the police arrived. Officer Hayes responded to the call, along with her partner, a veteran cop named Detective Frank Morrison. "Mr. Vane, we'll need to clear the house before you go inside," Detective Morrison said. "Do you have any idea who might have done this?" "I have a pretty good idea." The search revealed that nothing had been stolen, but someone had clearly been through my home office. Papers were scattered, drawers were open, and my computer had been moved. Whoever had broken in was looking for something specific. "Any idea what they might have been after?" Officer Hayes asked. "Probably evidence. Someone wants to find something they can use against me." Detective Morrison examined the front door lock. "This was picked, not forced. Whoever did this has some skill with locks." I thought about Silas Reeves' background. Monica had mentioned once that he'd worked in property management before joining the recruiting firm. Property managers often learned lock-picking as part of their job. "Detective Morrison, I think my ex-wife and her former lover broke into my house. They've been escalating their harassment despite the restraining order." "Do you have any proof?" I walked over to my computer and pulled up the security system interface. "Actually, I do." The footage was crystal clear. Monica and Silas had entered my house at 3:47 p.m., spent nearly 2 hours searching through my office, and left empty-handed at 5:23 p.m. The cameras had captured their faces, their voices, and their obvious frustration at not finding whatever they'd been looking for. "Well, that makes our job easy," Detective Morrison said. "We'll issue warrants for both of them immediately." Monica and Silas were arrested the next morning. The breaking and entering charges were serious felonies, and their violation of the restraining order added additional legal consequences. I received a call from the prosecutor's office that afternoon. "Mr. Vane, this is Assistant District Attorney Lisa Rodriguez. I'm handling the case against Monica Thorne and Silas Reeve. Based on the evidence you've provided, we're confident we can secure convictions on all charges." "What kind of sentences are we looking at?" "Breaking and entering is a Class C felony in Maine, punishable by up to 5 years in prison. The restraining order violation adds another year. Given their lack of prior criminal records, they'll probably get suspended sentences with probation, but they'll have felony convictions on their records. The professional consequences would be devastating. Felony convictions would make it nearly impossible for either of them to find employment in their previous fields. Monica's recruiting career was permanently over, and Silas would never work in corporate management again. But Monica wasn't done fighting. 3 days later, I received a call from a lawyer named Robert Sterling, who claimed to represent Monica in a civil lawsuit against me. "Mr. Vane, my client intends to sue you for intentional infliction of emotional distress, invasion of privacy, and defamation of character." I almost laughed. "Mr. Sterling, your client is facing felony charges for breaking into my house. I don't think she's in a position to sue anyone. The criminal charges are separate from the civil matter. My client believes you deliberately destroyed her reputation and career through a campaign of harassment and public humiliation. Your client destroyed her own reputation by committing adultery and then compounding that mistake with increasingly desperate attempts at retaliation. Every action I took was legal and justified. We'll let a jury decide that." I hung up and immediately called my own lawyer, David Chen. "Julian, this lawsuit is frivolous, but it's going to cost time and money to defend against. However, I think we can turn this to your advantage." "How?" "We'll file a countersuit for malicious prosecution, harassment, and the costs associated with defending against her false allegations. Given the criminal charges she's facing and the restraining order violation, we have a strong case." The legal maneuvering continued for several weeks, but the outcome was inevitable. Monica's lawsuit was dismissed with prejudice, meaning she couldn't refile it, and my countersuit resulted in a judgment against her for my legal fees and damages. Monica was now facing criminal charges, a civil judgment, and complete financial ruin. But somehow, she still wasn't ready to surrender. The final confrontation came on a Saturday evening at Murphy's Pub. I was having dinner with Danny and Mark when Monica walked in, clearly intoxicated and looking for a fight. She'd lost weight since I'd last seen her, and her appearance suggested someone who'd been drinking heavily for weeks. Her hair was unkempt, her clothes were stained, and she moved with the unsteady gait of someone who'd crossed the line from tipsy to dangerous. "There he is," she announced loudly, pointing at me. "The man who destroyed my life." The bar grew quiet as patrons recognized the potential for drama. Pete, the bartender, moved closer, clearly ready to intervene if necessary. I stood up slowly, keeping my voice calm and controlled. "Monica, you're violating the restraining order by being here. You need to leave." "Restraining order?" She laughed bitterly. "You want to talk about restraining orders? How about we talk about how you recorded me without consent? How about we talk about how you systematically destroyed my career, my family relationships, and my future? I talked about how you committed adultery in my home, lied to me repeatedly, and then escalated to criminal behavior when you didn't like the consequences." She took a step closer, swaying slightly. "You think you're so smart, don't you? You think you won." "Monica, I didn't win anything. You lost everything through your own choices." "My own choices?" Her voice rose to a shriek. "You manipulated everything. You set me up." "I set up security cameras in my own home. You chose to use my home for your affair. That's not manipulation. That's documentation." The entire bar was watching now, and I could see people recording the confrontation with their phones. Monica's public breakdown was being captured for posterity. "You destroyed me!" she screamed. "No, Monica, you destroyed yourself. I just made sure everyone could see what you'd done." She lunged at me then, her hands reaching for my face, but Detective Morrison, who'd been having a quiet drink at the bar, intercepted her before she could make contact. "Monica Thorne, you're under arrest for violating a restraining order and attempted assault," he said, cuffing her with practiced efficiency. As he led her toward the door, Monica turned back to me one last time. "This isn't over, Julian." I looked at her calmly, surrounded by witnesses who'd just seen her threaten me and attempt physical violence. "Yes, Monica, it is." That was the last time I ever saw her in person. The final chapter of Monica's downfall played out in the courtroom 6 weeks later. She'd been unable to make bail on the new charges, so she'd spent the intervening time in county jail, which had apparently given her some perspective on the consequences of her choices. When she appeared for sentencing, Monica looked like a different person. The arrogant, manipulative woman who'd betrayed me had been replaced by someone who understood that actions have consequences. Assistant District Attorney Rodriguez presented the state's case with methodical precision. Your Honor, the defendant has engaged in a pattern of escalating criminal behavior that began with adultery and progressed through breaking and entering, restraining order violations, and attempted assault. Ms. Thorne has shown no remorse for her actions and has consistently tried to blame others for the consequences of her own choices. Monica's public defender, a young lawyer who'd clearly drawn the short straw, tried to argue for leniency. Your Honor, my client has already suffered significant consequences for her mistakes. She's lost her job, her family relationships, and her reputation. Additional punishment would be excessive. Judge Patricia Williams, a no-nonsense woman with 30 years on the bench, wasn't buying it. Ms. Thorne, you've had multiple opportunities to accept responsibility for your actions and move forward with your life. Instead, you've chosen to escalate your behavior and blame others for your problems. This court has no sympathy for someone who refuses to learn from their mistakes. The sentence was harsh, but fair. 2 years in prison for the breaking and entering charges, with an additional year for the restraining order violations and attempted assault. Monica would serve 18 months with good behavior, and she'd have felony convictions that would follow her for the rest of her life. Silas received a similar sentence, though his lawyer managed to get him 6 months less time due to his cooperation with the investigation. As Monica was led away in handcuffs, she looked at me one final time. I saw no anger in her expression now, just the hollow recognition of someone who'd finally understood the true cost of their choices. After the sentencing, I walked out of the courthouse feeling a sense of closure I hadn't expected. The systematic destruction of Monica Thorne was complete, and every consequence had been earned through her own actions. Detective Morrison caught up with me in the parking lot. Mr. Vane, I've been a cop for 23 years, and I've never seen someone handle a situation like this with more class and precision. You never lost your temper, never broke the law, and never gave them any ammunition to use against you. I'm a security professional, Detective. I understand the importance of documentation and proper procedures. Well, your documentation and procedures just put 2 criminals in prison where they belong. That evening, I returned to Murphy's pub for a celebration drink with Danny and Mark. The bar was crowded, and several people approached our table to congratulate me on the outcome of the case. Julian, Pete the bartender said, setting a beer in front of me. I've seen a lot of divorces and breakups in this place, but I've never seen anyone handle betrayal with that much intelligence and dignity. Thank you, Pete. I appreciate that. You know what the best part is? Danny asked. Monica thought she was smarter than you. She thought she could manipulate and deceive you without consequences. Instead, she discovered that betraying a cybersecurity expert was the dumbest mistake she could possibly make. Mark raised his glass. To Julian Vane, who proved that intelligence and patience are more powerful than deception and manipulation. As we drank, I reflected on the past few months and the systematic way Monica's betrayal had led to her complete downfall. Every consequence had been logical, legal, and justified. She'd lost her marriage, her family, her career, her reputation, her freedom, and her future, all through her own choices. The security cameras in my home had captured her adultery. Her lies had been exposed by her own actions. Her escalating behavior had led to criminal charges. Her refusal to accept responsibility had resulted in additional consequences. I hadn't destroyed Monica Thorne. I'd simply documented her self-destruction and ensured that the appropriate people had access to the truth. My phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. For a moment, I wondered if Monica had somehow managed to contact me from prison, but the message was from her mother. Julian, I wanted you to know that we're grateful for how you handled this situation. Monica needed to face consequences for her actions, and your approach was both legal and appropriate. We hope she learns from this experience and becomes a better person. Thank you for your patience with our family during this difficult time. I showed the message to Danny and Mark, who both smiled. Even her own family thinks you did the right thing, Mark observed. Because I did do the right thing. I refused to be a victim, and I made sure that betrayal had consequences. As the evening continued, I realized that Monica's betrayal had taught me something valuable about myself. I was capable of systematic, patient, devastating revenge when wronged, but I was also capable of executing that revenge within the bounds of law and morality. I'd never raised a hand in anger, never broken a law, never acted out of pure emotion. Every step of Monica's destruction had been calculated, documented, and justified. The security breach in my marriage had been resolved. The threat had been neutralized. The system had been restored to proper functioning. Monica Thorne's future had been canceled through her own choices, and I'd simply been the administrator who executed the consequences. 3 months later, I received a letter from Monica in prison. The return address showed she was serving her sentence at the Maine Correctional Center for Women. I almost threw the letter away without reading it, but curiosity got the better of me. Julian, it began. I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to write this letter. I've had a lot of time to think about what happened, and I finally understand that you didn't destroy my life. I destroyed my own life through my choices and actions. You simply made sure that those choices had consequences. I was wrong to betray you, wrong to lie to you, and wrong to blame you for the results of my own behavior. I don't expect forgiveness, and I don't expect a response to this letter. I just wanted you to know that I finally understand what you tried to tell me. Actions have consequences. I hope you're happy and successful in your new life. You deserve better than what I gave you. Monica. I read the letter twice, then filed it away in the folder containing all the documentation from our divorce and her criminal case. Monica had finally learned the lesson I'd been trying to teach her, but it had taken 18 months in prison for the message to sink in. I never responded to the letter, and I never heard from her again.